Fantastic. I'm Natasha Visser, and thanks for joining me today again at my Let's Explain series A to Z. And today I'm going to cover the letter Q for questions. And I think that questions can be a very positive tool that we can use when we talk to our teenagers and our kids, but we can also use it to destroy our relationships and make very bad decisions when we use the questions incorrectly. So let's look at questions specifically when it comes to talking to our kids about sex. And I want to cover and first look at when a child comes to you with a shocking statement. We normally use a bad question. And that sets us up for a disaster. So I'm thinking about this one teenage girl that came to me, and something bad happened actually. It wasn't so bad. She was 12 years old, and a boy took her hand and put her hand into his crotch. And that's bad for a 12-year-old. But she came to her mother and actually told her mother what happened. And what did her mother do? Who did that? What did he do? Why did he do that? What did you do? I'm going to go to the principal office and going to make these things right. So her overreaction has actually caused this little girl to pull away completely. And actually, after that, worse things has happened. And much worse than just putting her hand there. And she said, no, I couldn't tell my mom. If she was just reacting to this and asking me all these thousands of questions, what would she say if she hear what happened after that? So we distance ourselves by our children by overpowering them with shooting questions. And we're also overpowering them with overreacting. And when we overreact like that, we shun our children away, and they actually, they won't come to you again for more information and more help in the future if you overreact like this. So be really, really careful. When you talk to your child, when he or she approach you, don't overreact, stay calm. So my tip here is what you can tell is, tell me more about that. So as calmly as possible, ask them rather, tell me more about that. Get more information and be calm. That's a really, really important, especially if it's like a sexual situation that might be frightening for you. Remember, your child took a lot of courage to come and talk to you. So the first thing, you can use questions really, really ineffectively, and it can actually be damaging. But I want to help you to use questions strategically. Now, we tend to ask children stupid questions. We would ask them, how was your day? Did you do your homework? That is like, you'll get a one-word answer. For a teenager, you would ask them, or where did you go? Out. Or did you do your homework? Yes. I mean, that's not actually a question. That is just, I don't know what you call it. You're not getting more information by asking questions like that. So don't ask your teenagers questions. I know Kevin Levin says don't ask your teenagers questions, and I do agree with him. But when you feel that you need to use a question, use it strategically. And I think if you use a question strategically, you set yourself up for a lot of success, and you can actually use that to bond with your child. So let's go more in detail with that. So I want to say, first, if you want to use a question, it needs to be planned, it needs to be specific, and it needs to be strategic. It shouldn't be like a firing question. Set yourself up for success. Now, a question, my purpose for any question that I ask by my personal team, my own teenagers, or any tween or teen that I'm counseling, it is an on-purpose question. There must be a reason for asking that question. Otherwise, it's just a statement or just filling up space. All right, so it needs to be strategic, on purpose. Now, for parents, your purpose for your question needs to be to connect with your child. You want to connect with your teenager. So if that's your purpose of the question, you're already halfway there in succeeding in making it a strategic, effective question. So secondly, your question needs to be sincere. You need to be sincere when you ask your questions. Your children, and especially teenagers, will see that you are not really interested, or you are faking the question. Then your question needs to be in such a way to elicit or invite conversation, not to preach. Because what we do is we want to preach to our teenagers, especially when it comes to sex and sexuality and decisions and dating and relationship. We want to preach. Asking a nice question, and I'm going to help you today on what is a good question. I'll give you some examples today. But when we rather focus on asking a strategic question with the purpose of connecting with your child, that question will set you up for connection and not to preach for your child. So that's very important. And then questions guide the conversation. It's a really powerful way of guiding the conversation with your child. And then questions also invite your child to think. So, but if it's in the heat of the moment and you're arguing, asking the wrong question will create more anger. So make sure that when you are using your strategic questions, that it's not in anger. It's a way of actually connecting with your children. All right. So when we are looking, that's what I feel that's good questions, or what setting you up for good questions. Let's go and look at then how does good questions look like. Now, first I'm going to give you 3 rules when using a question. So first, you shouldn't use it to interrogate your child, even if you feel like, no, I'm just interested in my teenager. If you feel like that, that's good. But then use it on purpose, on a specific way. All right, so first, there's 3 rules. Never, ever ask why. So you never ask a why question. Doesn't matter how you ask a why question, it always comes off as being judgmental, and that your child needs to justify what he did. So let's look at an example. What will you do? Why didn't you do your homework? What would you get? Attitude, disrespect, and anger from your child? Definitely. Okay, why didn't you take out the trash? Okay, irritation. All right, that question wouldn't get your child to do anything productive after you ask that question. So never ask the question why. Second rule, set up the question. So when you are going to ask a strategic question, you need to set up the question so that it will create that connection. I'm going to show you now how you're going to do that. So set up the question correctly and positively. And then the last thing is, when you ask a question, be sincere so that you truly connect with your child. So you need to follow up with, tell me more about that. When you ask a question and your child responds and you are putting your child down, say, well, that's stupid, or why did you say that, or I don't agree. When you respond like that, when you ask a question, your child is going to back away and is not going to trust you to open up to you again. So the 3 rules is, never ask why, set up your question so that it will come off that you are asking to inviting them to the conversation. So you need to set up your question. And then the last one is follow up with the question by asking, tell me more about that. Never put your child down and say something negative or disrespectful towards him after he has answered your question. So let's look at a few questions. Now, I've got about 15 questions here, but let's look at a few just for example in today's session. Okay, so how do we set it up strategically? So how you would set up the question is, let's use an example. I actually did this today with my son. So I said, well, I'm struggling here. I'm trying to think about a creative way of starting a new coaching discussion group on my platform. I need your opinion about that, and I would love to get your input. Can you see how beautifully I set it up so that I can ask him a question about that? So I'm inviting my child for conversation. So I said, what do you think about this idea? So I'm telling my child his opinion is important. All right, his view is important. So that's a good question. What do you think about? What is your thoughts about? So I set it up positively. I set it up in a way that I'm inviting him to the question and that I feel that his answer and opinion is important to me. So even though this is for opinion, you can also ask these questions of, what do you think about that boy talking to his mother like that, if you see it in a shopping center or something? Ask their opinions. Okay, what do you mean by that? That's a good question. So when they are saying something and you feel like the anger is rising up and you might feel like, no, this is not good, first check and make sure you understand what they are saying. So ask, what do you mean by that? That's a good question. Or tell me more about that. That's a good question. That's a positive question. You're inviting your child to engage with you. Okay, can you see it's not judgmental? Okay, another good question. What do you think he or she would do? Or I would love your insight in this situation. So when you are watching a television show or movie, or you're just talking about a friend, ask them, what do you think she should do? What would you do done in their shoes? What do you think about the situation? Can you see you can showing your teenager his opinion matter? Because now when you're showing them that their opinion matter, when you're going to talk to them about sex and relationships, they know my parent takes my answers and my view of the world is important, and they will listen to me. All right, so that's a good question. So another way of setting, this is a nice sentence to use to set your question up for success. You can say, that is interesting. How did you come to that conclusion? So it's important for you. You don't understand why your child is saying something about internet use or technology use, or why you should play a TV game or an online game, whatever. So he can make a statement about something, and you can just brush him off or say no, or her, or whatever. Or you can say, your daughter come and talk about a boy she likes or something. You can say, well, that's interesting. And then you say, how do you come to that conclusion? Ask them, how did they come to that it's okay to date this boy? How did you come to that conclusion that it's okay to play the online game? But don't lead the question. Be careful for leading questions. Just set yourself up so that the child will elaborate on what you are talking about. Let's look at another few. What would you want? What would you want if you were guaranteed that you were going to get it? Now that's a good question, because children comes to us, especially teenagers, with like a far-fetched story to get their way, to get us to agree to go to a party or something. And it's important to set them up and ask them, listen, where do you want to go with this? What do you want to happen if you are guaranteed that this will happen? It's a good question, because then you can see where their thoughts are. What are they thinking about the situation? Or are they just trying to manipulate you to get their way? Okay, what would you want to change about? That's a good question. What would you like to change about our morning routine? Maybe you are fighting every day about your morning routine, getting up in time and go to school. Now you can say, well, tomorrow morning I'm not getting, why are you not getting up in time? Tomorrow morning I'm not waking you up. You can be like that and have an argument, or you can say, what would you want to change? Okay, I like these questions because you are prompting your child to think. Now we want our children to have creative problem solving. That's a skill that our children need to learn in the world. And asking these strategic questions invite your child to think and not fight. I love what Dr. Paul says. Don't respond until the adrenaline is gone. So when you're angry, don't respond. And then after adrenaline is gone, ask a strategic question that elicits thinking and not fighting. Can you see that this question is helping you to let your child think and not fight? What's that like for you? That's also a good question. Going to school, or when they did something, what is that like for you? Okay, and then this is a good one for when you ask something about schoolwork. All right, so let's see. What is working about your studies today? Let's use that. Why didn't you do your schoolwork today? What helped you to get through your schoolwork so fast today? Do you think you'll get a better answer than just, are your schoolwork done? All right. Okay, when they are angry or crying, this is a good question. What did somebody, put in the name, they say to you that made you so excited, or made you cry, or made you feel angry? Okay, what would we do normally say? Why do you cry? Okay, why are you so angry? You see, we use why questions too much. Don't use that. Rather ask them, because you want to understand why they are angry or sad or excited about something. All right, so what purpose would that serve? That is a good question. Now you need to be careful. You need to set that up so it's not a judgmental way of setting it up. Okay, it's all about your attitude. If you're going to say, well, what purpose will that serve you? I mean, that's not putting it in a positive way. But you can say, okay, doing this now, for what purpose do you want to do your homework not now? Okay, can you see yourself setting yourself up to ask them how are they thinking and going forward with that? And then this is a good question as well. What did you hear me say? Check in with them. We tend to go off and preach to our children, all right? And I like questions because questions invite conversation. So what we do is then we are talking with our children and not talking to our children. So ask yourself, am I talking to my children or I'm talking with them? Are we having a conversation? So check in with them, and that's the way by asking, what did you hear me say? Okay, so check what they are hearing. Remember, confirmation bias says they only hear what they want to hear. Okay. All right, and then listen a little bit more about problem solving. What would it look like to you if the situation was resolved? Let's say you fight about going to a party or online gaming or a dating situation or something like that. Okay, what would it look like to you if the situation is resolved? That's a good question because it helps you to invite your child to think about how will this work, not just getting his way, but have a creative problem-solving situation. Another good one is, what problem do you want to solve? Now, sometimes they would just want to get their way, or most of the time teenagers want to get their way. But ask them, what problem do you want to solve here? Time management, getting to do a new activity, getting more free time. What is the problem that you want to solve here? That's a good one. And then I'm going to give you the last question that I want to ask, and I think that's a good one, is are you being honest to yourself? All right, that's a good question. Because sometimes we are lying to ourselves, and kids know they are just seeing it and checking in if their parents will allow it or not. So ask your child, are you being honest with yourself about the situation? And get them to think about their approach to life. Now, I gave you now a few questions that helps you set up for successful conversation with your children. Use these only in strategic situations so that you can talk to your child with confidence and invite conversation. If you're not using it that way, you will most likely be judgmental and condescending, and you want to connect with your teenager. So practice some of these questions this week. Maybe make a comment below and let me know which questions works and which didn't. And then I'll see you next week again on my next session with the Let's Explain A to Z series. If you want more about how to talk to your child about sex, you can visit my website, letsexplain.org. I've got a digital course there where you can subscribe and then join me at my next coaching session. It was nice talking to you today. Thank you.